The hidden secrets in Bach's music, the Goldberg Variations. To start with, and in order to contextualize this piece, we are going to speak briefly about Bach's life and introduce some fragments of his other work. We will listen to the Ciaconna and the musical Offering while also discovering some of their secrets. Johann Sebastian Bach was born on the 21st of March in 1685 in Eisenach, a city which is located in the center of Germany. It was a family-friendly environment and was home to 53 notable musicians over 7 generations. As you very well may be aware, Bach was a popular organist and composer who composed 1087 original works. Bach was the father of 20 children. Yes, that's correct, 20. He had them with 2 different wives, 7 with his first wife, Maria Barbara, and upon her death in 1720, he had another 13 with his second wife, Anna Magdalena. If you wish to gain more of an understanding of the historical background, you can learn about the time in which Bach was alive in this video. Society was coming out of a dark era and the Enlightenment was beginning. In 1633, the Roman Inquisition accused Galileo Galilei of presenting heretical doctrines in his last book, where he defended the heliocentric model proposed by Copernicus and contradicted the geocentric model protected by the Church. This censorship, like others in that era, made many thinkers feel defenseless when expressing their ideas. This was the case for the rationalist philosopher René Descartes, who delayed the publication of The World, or a treatise on light, for many years. He also used the heliocentric model to confirm his theories. This era led many distinguished members of society to communicate by means of secret languages so as not to be harassed or incriminated. In certain cases, art itself also contained coded or hidden messages. We can find them in Michelangelo's works in the Sistine Chapel, the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci, or in the Masonic symbols which are hidden in many cathedrals. Everything seems to indicate that, at the end of the Baroque period, the use of mathematical poetry also became popular. Using geometria and intellectual games, codes that contained secret messages were hidden within prose and verse. In fact, the German poet and librettist Christian Friedrich Henrici, nicknamed Pikanter, was a recognized enthusiast of this literary trend. He was also well known for writing numerous cantatas for Bach. Bach may have learned from and practiced through these sources, although we cannot say for sure. These practices were kept secret, possibly due to the potential discredit, social rejection, or even persecution involved. It might be because of this that Bach kept his code secret and only left messages for those who were able to decipher them. At the start of the summer of 1720, Bach was out of town with his patron, the Duke of Cothen, when he suddenly received news of his first wife's demise. This situation led him to compose one of the most well-known, fascinating and melancholic movements of classical music, the Ciaconna. This piece is part of the Violin Partita No. 2 in D minor. Now let's discover some of the secrets that are hidden in it. Gematria is a method that comes from Hebrew numerology. Letters are used to symbolize numbers. This method was used to decipher and interpret the Kabbalah and the Torah, and Helga Thon was also able to use it to uncover secret messages in Bach's music. She used Anglo-Saxon alphabetical music notation in a cryptographic way, assigning the number 1 to the note A and the number 2 to the note B, and so on, as you can see on the screen. Using this method, she found Maria Barbara's name at the beginning of the Ciaconna, as well as other phrases of certain religious symbology. Here we show how this piece could be a musical epitaph dedicated to Maria Barbara. Surprisingly, Helgathon was also able to discover that 11 Lutheran choir melodies are hidden within the harmonies and melodies of the chaconne. They are part of the same musical fabric, but are included in such a way that they are imperceptible to the listener. We are going to focus on bars 89 to 100 of the original melody for violin, the part where these choirs are hidden. Many musicians and musicologists have studied and paid tribute to Bach for more than 2 centuries. The deeper one goes into his work, the more surprise and admiration it evokes. Without a shadow of a doubt, he is the best harmony and counterpoint teacher of all time. His work consists of stringing together and unraveling musical themes over and over again, creating an exemplary piece of extreme beauty, fantasy, and perfection, as if it were an architectural structure. Another example of where we can observe this beauty and proportionality full of decorative elements is in the musical Offering. This piece by Bach was created in part thanks to Frederick the Great, the King of Prussia, who was also a composer and a flutist who had his own theme. He had challenged Bach to improvise while testing out the latest addition to the royal palace, the pianoforte. After this meeting with the king, Bach created a musical Offering in 1747, based on the royal theme. He dedicated and sent the piece to Frederick the Great, but sadly it seems that the king never got to play it. Bach composed this piece as if it were a jigsaw puzzle. In the score he wrote Regis iussu cantio et reliqua canonica arte resoluta, the theme provided by the king, with additions in canonical style. If you pay attention, the acronym of these words is ricercar, which means quest. We will now see how, in the last canons of this piece, Bach places different clefs, repeated variations, and what's most interesting, the title Quaerendu invenientis within a single staff. This means inquire to find. You have to investigate to solve the canons. Let's look at the solution of this jigsaw puzzle. To solve it, we need to duplicate the staff and turn it upside down so that we can find the two-voice canon. Interesting, right? The greatest curiosity of this royal theme, later called crab canon, is that it works as the Moebius strip does. The Moebius strip was discovered in 1858 by the German mathematicians Moebius and Listing. It is a one-banded figure that is single-sided. We can start on one side and go to the other infinitely in both directions. When turning the circumference, we link both parts of the canon and find the Moebius strip. We will now listen to one canon for two voices. Pay attention to the clef at the beginning of the staff and, oddly enough, the other at the end. One voice will start from this side and the other voice will start from the other end. They'll meet in the middle, interpreting the same melody they've been playing inversively. Let's see how it sounds. And now the canon starts over, infinitely and inversely. Finally, we come to the Goldberg Variations. They were written in 1742 under the name Aria with Diverse Variations, at the request of the Count of Kaiserling, the Austrian ambassador from the court of Dresde. According to the explanation Johann Nicholas Forkel gives in his biography on Bach that was published in 1802, Count Hermann Karl von Kersinglen was frequently ill and had long nights of insomnia. Thinking music would alleviate his torment, he requested Bach to write some musical works to distract him and help him fall asleep. Some might ask, why is this work currently called Goldberg's Variations if the original name was Aria with Diverse Variations? Well, this is, according to Forkel, because Johann Gottlieb Goldberg, the young harpsichordist of the corps, who was also a student of Bach's, would play the variations night after night to aid the Count when he was unable to sleep. Now we will be able to see the architectural structure of this piece. There are 30 variations of the main theme, the aria, which consists of 32 bars in total, and the piece ends with the return of the same aria. It is a circular work made up of 32 pieces with a main theme of 32 bars. 93% of the work is in G major, a key which symbolized the divine blessing in the Baroque period. The other three variations, which make up the other 7% of the work, are written in G minor and have a slightly more tragic and melancholic tone. As a side note, it's common to find songs that are written in G major. According to this chart provided by Spotify, a musical platform that currently has more than 100 million subscribers, most of the words that their users are listening to are written in this key. Getting back to the structure of the Golden Variations, all the variations have 32 bars, except for 5 that have 16 bars. The work can be divided in half and in 2 main parts. In other words, in 16 pieces each. The first part begins with the aria, which is 32 bars. Let's give it a listen. The second part, in Variation 16, begins with a theme that lasts 16 bars. It's called Overture, and it sounds like this. As you can hear, it has the feel of the opening of a brand new pot. The second part of this variation, that has 32 bars, works as a typical variation. Somehow, the opening of only 16 bars plays the role of the central area between the two parts, which are exactly 480 bars each. Interestingly enough, these variations can also be structured in 3 parts. The first division is marked between Variation 9 and the vigorous entrance of Variation 10 after the second intervention in canon format, which lasts 16 bars. The other point can be found between Variation 21 and Variation 22 after a second intervention, which is also in canon format and also lasts 16 bars. It seems that this 3-part structure has a connection with the golden ratio, where a mathematical structure is formed in the ratio of 1.6, and we can find it in these 2 points. There also happen to be exactly 280 bars in both directions. Now, pay attention to 9 canons that the work has in total. Throughout its course, they grow progressively from the canon in unison in Variation 3 to the canon to the 9th in Variation 27. We could also say that the canons are built into the multiplication table of 3. In other words, in Variation 3, which is the result of 3 times 1, we find the first canon in unison. In Variation 6, which is the result of 3 times 2, we find the second canon to the second. In Variation 9, which is the result of 3 times 3, we find the canon to the third, and so on, right up to Variation 27, which is the result of 3 times 9, and where we find the last canon with an imitation of the 9th. We are witness to a perfect merger of maths, arithmetic, and geometry, and we can contemplate the form and the basis of Bach's musical structure clearly. In the last variation, the 13th, where we would expect a canon to the 10th, we find a theme called Quod Libet. Here can be found fragments of a popular Saxon song called I Haven't Been With You for Such a Long Time. This refers to the return of the aria and leads to the completion of the entire circle of Goldberg's variations. It sounds like this. Before we finish, let me tell you just one last secret about Bach's musical signature. The motif Bach has been catalogued in up to 400 of Bach's works. He added his signature in musical notes. In the Anglo-Saxon music notation, as I explained at the start of this video, the note B flat represents the letter B, the note A represents the letter A, the note C represents the letter C, and B natural, in the German notation, represents the letter H. I'm telling you this because in Bach's last work, the Unfinished Fugue, part of the art of the fugue, Carl Philipp Emanuel, one of Bach's sons, who is still considered an important musician and composer today, wrote something by hand. Referring to the last 4 bass notes, Bach's musical signature, Bach's son wrote, "The composer died" in the counter subject. Bach suffered from severe health problems, including the loss of his sight. He died composing this fugue at the age of 65 in 1750. Are the hidden secrets in his music all a result of chance? What we know for sure is that his work will continue to fascinate and surprise us, with or without the mysteries and curiosities.